Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show will begin in 5 minutes. Let's make some noise! Let's make some noise!
Let's do this!
Okay, can everybody hear us now? So please just a quick shout back. I think we're all good now. Hello. We should be good now. Okay, I think we are now good. So let's just see. Ritchie, just if you can, also just let me know that your audio is coming through now.
I can hear you, but I don't know if anybody can hear me. Okay, the mute symbol just went off of mine, so hopefully everybody can hear me now. It's a great way to start season or to end season 3 is.
Yes, isn't it just wonderful? Well,
Yeah.
Everything else went smoothly, so clearly there has to be something that's a little bit wonky, but I think we're all good now. We're good to go. We've got the picture going, we've got the sound going, we've got the animations going, and so let's do this. Very warm welcome to everyone to our final episode of SOC for the year. We are super excited and glad that you can now hear us too, so that we can get the show on the road. There are lots of you that tuned in already. Thank you so much for being here. It's really wonderful to connect one more time. There's Dan, who's tuned in from Richland. It's great to have you here. I think there are quite a few people in the colder parts of the US that have tuned in. So I hope you've got something warm to drink with you. Let us know where you're watching from. Let us know what you're up to, what time of the day it is. You know, you're drinking coffee, drinking wine, beer, something hot, whatever it is. Give us a shout. While we are...
Yeah, and if we want to, and Natalie, if you and I want to make everybody in the audience jealous, we should mention how warm it is where we are. So today it's supposed to be 75 here in Phoenix, sunny, endless sunshine to shovel off the driveways, you know. And so what is it? So what is it there in South Africa?
Yeah, it's pretty sweltering here. We've just come out of another heat wave. I think it's heat wave number 5 or 6 for the summer already. It's really swelteringly hot. We've had temperatures of up to the mid 30s. So I don't know. I think that's like in the about 100.
Probably, yeah.
In Fahrenheit. So it's been really, really hot. As I'm sitting here, I'm, not wishing for coffee. Or Glühwein. Yes, yeah, no. I'm on the water for now, despite the celebration cheer. I will wait for after the show. You guys go ahead and celebrate with us, because we've got lots to celebrate. And first and foremost, celebrate all of you guys who've tuned in and who are busy with the comments. It's really awesome to see all of you tapping away there on your keyboards. And
and really this show is about you guys, and we're just here to help facilitate discussions with you and help you with your photography. So it's great to see you guys interacting with each other. And if you have any comments or questions or anything like that, just fire them away. If it's a question you really want us to answer, make sure you put a Q in front of it so that we know. Yes.
In case you are new, I see there's lots of familiar but also new faces. So that's really great to hear. World Shaking is... not familiar to me, so I assume that's your first time tuning in live. It's great to have you here. You can all send us, your comments if you're here for the first time or you've been here before. And a warm welcome to everyone who's here for the very first time. Stephen definitely isn't. He is, rather cold where he is. Sorry about that.
I feel really bad.
Yeah, very. Yes. But I wanted to ask you, Ritchie, what did you think of our slideshow this time around? I'm not sure if you all were able to catch it yet. We posted the slideshow earlier today with the images that you uploaded from last month's episode. Everything about Riala Ace looks. And I thought there were some really awesome images in there, and people had lots of fun trying out those recipes.
Yeah, it's always so great to see everybody's pictures. I mean, that's one of my favorite parts of doing this broadcast, is that you guys get to submit your pictures, and then we get to view them and appreciate them. And you guys are wonderful. And we've mentioned before that we've been able to see over the course of these 3 seasons, we've been able to see your guys' growth and improvements as photographers, and it's incredible to see it. So I very much appreciate everybody who tried the recipe, went out, shot, and then uploaded the pictures for us to share. So it was wonderful. And if you haven't seen that slideshow yet, it was published just a little bit before it was earlier today before the show. If you didn't catch it yet, make sure after this broadcast to go and watch that.
Absolutely. There were some really cool gems in there. And it's really worthwhile having a look. As well as if you've missed previous ones, thank you, Dan. My dog featured yet again. And some people submitted for the first time, like Joss. Thank you so much for joining us. I think last show was the first time that you tuned in. It's great to see you back again, and thank you for your submissions also. It's wonderful to have you all here. It's great that you're supporting the show. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure that you do, and also hit the notification bell, especially from here going forward, because we are closing season 3 now, and we're going into season 4, just to, give you a little bit of a pre-warning. We will switch things up yet again. So we don't want you to miss out on anything. So make sure that you hit the notification, and also the thumbs up if you like the show.
Yeah, and each season has been significantly different than the previous one. And of course, we'll get to this in just a moment. And maybe this is the segue into it. But yeah, we've if you go back and watch season 1 and then season 2 and now season 3, you'll see some pretty significant changes and evolutions of the show and so forth. And it's going to continue that into the next season as well.
Yes, absolutely. So before we dive into all of this, we asked a question earlier, and we just wanted to, have a bit of an icebreaker into the theme of today's show, which, as you all know, is double exposure. And we asked what you think is double exposure. Is it art or is it artsy? What are your thoughts? I mean, I assume that you're here, so you like it. So maybe you won't call it artsy. But let's just, have a look-see and hear what you guys think about it. And let's get us warmed up thinking about this type of photography. I'm so glad that we still managed to, get this show going and talk about this topic. We've been wanting to do this for the longest time. And so I'm really excited to chat about different things. I chatted to Ritchie yesterday as well, and I said to him that in preparation for the show, I also need to dust off and dive into the topic. And it's been an eye-opener for me, and I've had the most fun. It was really great. And there are some gems waiting in case you haven't followed all the different articles on Ritchie's blog about it. There's some really cool stuff that we're going to look at. So yeah, get excited. And let us know what you think. Is it
Yay.
art or is it artsy? Ritchie, what do you think? What do you think of double
Well,
exposure?
one of my first real experiences diving into double exposures was actually when I was in photography 101 at college. I remember learning about this photographer, and I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Maybe somebody in the audience can kind of remember. But he actually took multiple negatives and then combined them together. This is obviously way before Photoshop or anything like that. And then so he would have like a tree with like escalator coming out of it and stuff like that. And it was like really interesting how he revisualized nature by using multiple exposures. And of course, that's different than traditional, double exposure where you take a picture and then immediately or, nearly thereafter take a second exposure over top of it. But my thing is it can be art or artsy, depending on the creativity of the photographer themselves. And I think it can be gimmicky, but I think it could also be like really cool. So I guess that would be my answer.
Yes, a little bit of both, but you definitely have a point there. It can be. So we will dive into it and have a look-see. And then, if you are feeling a little bit shy right now and don't really have an idea, not swinging either way at the moment, you can share your thoughts later on. And I think Stanley's with you on this one. He also thinks that it can be art. I guess what he's not saying is that it's not skilled creative hands, then it can be something else. Yeah. So everyone, you're invited to share your thoughts. There's Andreas who says that's a photo that has never been taken by anyone else.
Yeah, it's true. Or, for the most part, I would say that's probably true. Because you go to a place, especially a place that's like heavily photographed, you go to, the Grand Canyon or the Eiffel Tower or something like that. You got to think, well, how could this be photographed in any sort of unique way that's never been done before? You could take a picture and think it's unique, but then you find out that there's 1,000 almost identical pictures that other people have taken,
Yes.
And so that would be one way to do that.
Yes, that's a very good point, actually. And then Robert is saying it's important that you find a good purpose, or else it might be seen as gimmicky. So a good purpose, I think what you're saying is that it's got a meaning to it, that there's something more than just adding two different exposures together just for the sake of it. I think that's definitely something that I feel strongly about. So, yeah, it's very good point as well, Robert. It's great. Anyone else? Like I said, what I wanted to say was that if you're feeling, not quite in the swing of thing yet, and you have some comments a little bit later along regarding this, please feel free, comment away. The people who are familiar with the show know this. We will take comments as and where we can, and definitely also towards the end of the show. So don't go anywhere, and if we don't answer your question straight away, don't worry. If it's something you really want an answer to, then, like Ritchie said, add the Q in front. Otherwise, we will get to the comments throughout the show or towards the end of it.
Yeah, and I think Dan had a response to this question pretty early on in the chat, and I don't know if we can pull that up or not, but yeah, I wonder if I can find it real fast. But yeah, he said, is it right there? Okay.
Yes.
It's an artsy way to make art.
Okay, that's a nice way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, now that we're on the same wavelength, I think let's dive into this. Before we go all the way into the theme of double exposures, we want to acknowledge that the season's coming to an end and that we have completed 3 years of live episodes on this channel and other channels, and a lot of things have been achieved, grown, and developed into. So we thought, let's take a moment and let's have a look back at what we've done on SOC and where we've been.
So like the first 2 seasons, it was on Nathalie's and my channel. We were simultaneously broadcasting. But for season 3, we felt that it made more sense to make it have its own channel. So sooc.live has its own channel on YouTube now. But the first 2 seasons were not broadcasted live on that channel. However, we have uploaded all of the videos, all the previous videos to the SOC Live YouTube channel. So if you missed any of those episodes, that's where you can find them.
Yes. And that's a really cool introduction, because that was part of the reason what we also thought, especially for people who are new and who are not aware of all of this. You can find all the shows on the channel. So we thought we'd give you a bit of an overview as to what's what and where you can find what kind of information, because we have actually really shared a ton load of information already. And like Ritchie rightly said, the channel is new, so we wanted to grow. So if you're here for the first time, make sure to subscribe. And if you know other people who enjoy the topic or would be interested, do invite them, share this channel with them so that we can grow even bigger and have an even bigger party at the end of next year. Alrighty, but when we talk through this, then we will, dive into double exposures. We've got recipes to recommend to you, and like I said, we will be ready to answer all sorts of questions.
I think last year's Christmas special or holiday special was that'll never be topped. I mean, I don't think that's the pinnacle of the craziness of it all, and it was a super cool episode. So if you need more after the end of this, if you're just craving more SOC,
Yes.
make sure you go back and watch that one in particular.
Yes, we had definitely tons of fun, and we will share links in the comments as well. So if you're not exactly sure, you can go into it. But let's start at the beginning and then make our way through the 3 years that we've had so far. I still can't believe that it's actually 3 years, but it is. I keep on having to count. Is it really 3 years? It is. We started in the first year with looking at the basics. We didn't know where the show was going to go. So, in the beginning, we learned about you, Ritchie. We learned about Fuji X Weekly. We learned about recipes. And if you go back and have a look, you'll see that we always had one recipe that we talked about a bit more in detail. There were 6 recipes that we picked out in particular, and then also spoke about other things. We shared lots of tips. If you are new to shooting with recipes, this is a really good year to go to. We'll post a link to the playlist in the comments, because I think we covered, first the things that you are interested in learning, or that you could stumble upon when you first start with recipes. Like, how do you even load a recipe? I mean, we started out with a bang, like right in the first episode, and chatted about that. And, those kinds of topics is what we talked about. And what we also introduced a couple of episodes along, which carried on all the way through to the second season and became even bigger this year was recipes for special occasions. Something that we felt people really struggled with. If you don't know what kind of recipe to shoot, if you're shooting landscapes, portraits, if it's raining, etc., etc., we introduce those so you can have a look there also, which is a lot
we've covered quite a few topics with that.
Yeah, we definitely did. I mean, some of the stuff I'm like, oh gosh, I can't believe we talked about all these different things, and it was often, that Ritchie, you shared the technical knowledge of a couple of things that people really had burning questions about, like, for example, like color chrome and effect in color chrome effect blue, which is still very popular as a standalone video as well.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, is when we initially broadcasted it was on Nathalie's and my channel. So all the videos from season 1 and 2 are on my channel, but I did set them to unlisted so that when people search for them, they go to the sooc.live channel. But if there's links or stuff still floating around, it'll take you back to the video that's in my channel, and that video there that we did we call it soundbite, where we took a little snippet of the show and put it as a standalone video. And the one on color chrome effect and color chrome effect blue is still very, very popular and getting quite a few views, each month, because people are very interested in that topic. People see those things in their camera and they don't really know what they do, or then maybe they have an idea, but they want to learn a little bit more. And that video is, I think, very helpful for that.
Yes, it definitely was. And it was a lot of fun to make it as well. So that's the kind of stuff that you can come across if you go back and look at season 1. There's also, I don't know if the link has been already shared, there's a playlist about tips and tricks, especially from season 1, that collates all those sound bites together, so you can have a look and listen at that. And then we went into season 2, and we went into a bit of a deeper dive, because we took, like I said, we took those recipes for special occasions and made it even bigger. So, and we did a pre-show in season 2 where we just had like a Q&A, like a little bit of a warm-up session before the actual show, and shared lots of tips and had live guests. So a lot of you that are sitting in the audience are familiar. You were here, and there's definitely something that we want to have another look in the new year, but more about that later. And we shared even more recipes. There were a ton of them that made it into the show. So if you are interested in a recipe, go back into these shows and listen to what we're sharing, because we were looking at qualities of recipes and situations where it's really good to use a specific recipe over another. I think that's all been really good to look at as well. And then not to forget, like Ritchie mentioned, our mystery chrome recipe that has its first anniversary now, because it was born in the last episode of last year.
Yep. So we did the impossible, something that's never been done before. As far as I know, it's never been done since. We created a film simulation recipe live on this show in the Christmas special and the holiday special. And then not only that, but we immediately took pictures with it and shared them live within minutes, shared those pictures live with you all, and you all were able to share them. And it was really cool. So yeah, I don't know if that'll ever be done again by anybody, but it was a really cool, should be in the Guinness Book of World Records, I think.
It should be. You're absolutely right. It should be, and we did that in a bumper episode. I think it was over 3 hours long. And there were a lot of you that were part of this. And today also celebrates that. And we even carry on with it because Mystery Chrome is going to make a reappearance. So we're very excited about that, to share that with you a little bit later. But that crazy year was year 2. That was all that went down last year and then some. What we picked out were just a few highlights, of course. There's lots and lots of hours of content there. So you can, throughout the festive season, you can go back into it and have a look-see what we all went up to. And then, of course, this year, lucky number 3, we were focusing a bit more on themes. We thought, let's take this special occasions recipe to a new level. So we split up the shows. We did theme shows where we talked about a specific topic, introduced recipes, and then had a second show where we answered questions and had lots of chats with you guys about what you thought about all the recipes. And then we introduced challenges as well. And something that we will, talk about a little bit later again as well, that I think was really good fun for all of you. You are more than welcome to let us know what you thought. And if you've been part of the 3 seasons, what parts you like the most? Is there something that you would like us to bring back? Is there something that you thought we shouldn't venture into again? Or whatever it is, let us know. We are in the process of, preparing for next year as well. So, have your say. And
if you have some feedback you've been sitting on, now's the time to speak up. And like you said, like Nathalie said, if there's something that you especially liked that we used to do that you wish we did again, let us know. If there's something that we're doing now that you really don't like, let us know. Those are things that we can kind of plan for and change as we're thinking about the next season.
Yes, definitely. And this season we took also different parts of themes that we discussed that we thought were quite interesting or helpful. Ethical consideration, creative approaches, being more streamlined. We challenged ChatGPT and did all sorts of crazy stuff. And so again, we shared lots of information during those shows. There's always some tips. There's some interesting conversations that happen during those shows as well. So they're definitely good sources of information to go back to and have a look at. And of course, last month we looked at the brand new Reala Ace that's all got us in a tailspin and has the bets going if it's going to be released in the new cameras, if there are firmware updates, etc., for all the cameras. And the viewer slideshow was about all those different kinds of Reala Ace looks. And this is where we are at. So here we are today.
Now we're going to get to double exposures.
Yes. And now we are going to go and see double.
Yep.
It's been quite a ride.
And this is a fascinating topic because it seems like maybe it would be somewhat straightforward, but then when you start diving into it and some of the things, like we're not even going to talk about all of the stuff that we could talk about with it because of the show would end up being like a 3-hour show. But it's a much deeper dive that you can take than it would initially seem. So it was a challenge. It was challenging to us to prepare for this show, and I think it's going to be challenging to you as we get into the challenge, and I think it's a good place to go, and I think especially over the holiday season, we'll have plenty of time to take a look at it and try it and learn. And I think we'll all grow from it because there's a lot to be learned.
Yes, absolutely. But please don't scare the people away, Ritchie. It's a challenge, but
No,
it's
no,
fun.
no. It is fun. And that's the other thing. It's a very fun thing. And I think both of us had like an eye-opening experience during the process of this, where kind of like a aha, like I never thought of that, or that kind of thing. So it's definitely don't be scared by this.
Yes, it's a ton of fun, and I had so much fun. It's a little bit addictive, so give yourself time, have, make some room, get excited, and let's get this show started.
Yeah.
So in good old theme fashion, we're going to first have a look at what double exposure actually is, where its roots are kind of like coming from, and then we will share tips and tricks, etc. We will share recipes, we have challenges for you, and towards the end of the show we will get into your questions and answers. So go ahead, give us your comments, questions, don't hold back, we will get to them. And I think, like I said, we can first have a look what double exposure is. We kind of like all know, but just to get us all, onto the same playing field, we're going to have an introduction. We're going to look at techniques in camera, because at the end of the day, this is really what it boils down to. Not only that double exposure exists and that you can do it, and there's amazing stuff that can be done in Photoshop, but this is SOC, so we're looking at what we can do in camera. And we will, share some techniques, some that you may know, some that you might not know, lots of stuff that I didn't know. And and out of this came some killer tips that we definitely want to share with you, and our good old food for thought to round it up. You ready?
Yeah, let's do this.
Let's do this. Let's do this. Okay, first and foremost, I need to just dive into, the history box a little bit. I found this image, this print in my box. Ritchie often talks about, there was a box of prints that he looked through, and this look reminded him of this, that, and the other, and this is why he made a specific recipe. This print is what I stumbled across when I was looking through my dad's old photographs. And I had no idea that this photo existed. I hadn't seen it while he was alive. Otherwise, I definitely would have asked him some questions. This is a photograph of my dad's. It's clearly a self-portrait and a double exposure. It's maybe a little bit creepy. I'm not quite sure. But experimental, and I thought it was a nice way to start off with, because double exposure definitely came, from the film days, often an accident. Who knows, maybe this was also an accident. And then grew into something a bit more, something that people, did on purpose. Like so often, first there is a accident, then it is a lucky accident, and then it becomes a movement.
Yeah, so, and we learned that it was really beginning kind of in the very early 1900s when double exposure started to kind of come onto the scene, so to speak. And so it's been around and part of photography for well over 100 years.
Yes, yeah. In those days when photography took a very long time, where people had to sit still for almost an hour, I think, or something, for the photograph to actually get taken, one photograph taken in an hour. And some people today complain about clarity taking long for a photograph. Those were the days when you really needed patience, and some people didn't have that patience. And then, obviously if there's movement, then you get results like what we're looking at now, or maybe also something, that's that was called ghosting in those days. But this is not a film picture.
No. This is one of my very early experiments at double exposure, where I put the camera on a tripod, took the first frame, and then took a second frame using the self timer and put myself into it. So it's a self ghosting portrait, and yeah, that's that's a very common early example of like double exposure photography. But of course, this is more recent, in digital.
Yes, absolutely. But this is definitely something that, I would think that people have come across. This is, I think, also like composites that people are very, familiar with. I think when you think of double exposure first, when you mention it to someone, I think this is these kinds of images that you think of. This is not in camera, this is in Photoshop. But maybe we can achieve something similar after the show that we've learned and shared all the tips and tricks with you, how maybe we can achieve something similar in camera. And also something like this, maybe. This is one of your images, Ritchie. I just, apart from the technique, before you get into that, just wanted to say that often double exposure also has a double meaning. Like Robert mentioned earlier, he thinks that double exposure needs to have a specific purpose. There is maybe more something more specific behind it and meaning, not just some random take it of photographs.
Yeah, and so this one is in camera double exposure, and you might ask yourself, well, what's the double exposure part of it? And it's actually the words. I used chalk and I wrote, on a black piece of paper, the words, and then took a picture of that and it put it into the picture, and also made it kind of have this faded look to it. And if anybody's wondering what that says, it says it's not a camera. So
yeah, there's an interesting article that you wrote about this that is very entertaining and educational. So go and look that up on Ritchie's blog. And but just to introduce a few other forms of double exposure. I think the most common one is that you have silhouettes and then they get filled with nature, with patterns or something to that effect. And it's definitely something that we are able to do in camera as well, but in a different way. Again, this is not in camera, but this is.
yes, and it's not. This isn't straight out of camera. This is an older picture. But I did, so the inside the jar is the downtown library in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I had a jar and a little portable studio kind of thing, like a little box with a white background and lights in it that was battery powered. And so then I took the exposure of the stairs, and then I went and took a picture. The second exposure was of the jar, and the camera combined them together. And then I did post process it a little bit to clean it up just a bit. But yeah, you can do stuff like that. You can put staircase inside of a jar if you want.
Yes, we will learn more about that just now. And this is as an example of something abstract that has more meaning to it and makes, the whole point of a double exposure a little bit more meaningful. And now, so we were looking at all these different types of double exposure to get to the point where we can now focus on what we can actually also do in camera. This is the crunch. This is where we want to get to. We, had conversations with people leading up to today where they look at an image and, are not sure or question, can this actually really be done in camera? And that's the kind of stuff that we want to talk to you about and share with you and give you the means so that you can experiment with it from tomorrow.
Yep. And I guess to just start from the beginning here, the double exposure feature is found either in your drive menu or on your drive dial, depending on what camera you have. And anything older than the X Pro 3 is only capable of doing 2 exposures. Starting with the X Pro 3, you could do up to 9, I believe. So you could do triple or quadruple or whatever, however many exposures you want. And I've done some fun experiments with that where I was able to make like a color picture out of like 8 toned black and white pictures combined together. So there's different creative things you can do with that, but we're specifically talking about double exposures and not more than 2. But that's where you'd find them. And on the older cameras, it's just one thing. We would refer to it now as average, since Fujifilm has added new features, new options beginning with the X Pro 3, and we'll get to all that in just a moment. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but just so you know, that's what we're talking about. Going into the drive menu or the drive dial, selecting double exposures, and then capturing 2 different exposures over top of each other in the camera. Yes. And so this is an example of something I did in camera. This is straight out of camera picture, and first exposure is of some fall leaves, and then the second exposure is of a rusted metal wheelbarrow. And so it basically imprints the first photo of the leaves on, gives it this texture and color of the rusted wheelbarrow into it.
Yes, I would have totally thought that was a wheelbarrow that I'm looking at. Yeah, so you can have lots of fun with it, and there are different techniques. And now we're speaking in particular about Fujifilm techniques, different types that you can find in your cameras. In general, it's multiple exposure. In the newer cameras, you have the choice of how these exposures get blended, I guess. So you have the more traditional approach where you fill a silhouette or something dark with another texture or another image, like here, where where the dark part of the image gets filled with whatever you're photographing as your second image. So you can then choose that setting. But at the same time, you also have what's called an average exposure, which doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that it puts 2 images on top of one another and kind of like gives them the same weighting in the amount of exposure that they're getting, which is a little bit easier to do. But the cool thing is, because we always see what we get as we're taking the photograph, you have the choice to actually see what your camera is producing as you go through this process. And you even get a chance to redo it if you didn't like what the camera gave you with your second shot or third or fourth.
Yeah,
so it makes
that's the great thing, is you can retry again and again and again. And that's the thing that I found myself doing is, I'll take, it's like, I know I want this to be one of the exposures. I take it and then I start looking around for what's going to be the other picture. And then, I might look at 3 or 4 things and kind of look in the preview and say, no, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. And when I find something that I think will work, I can take the picture. And if I don't like how it turned out, I can try again and I can keep trying. And so those are some great features of the Fujifilm cameras.
Yes, it definitely it helps your learning curve quite a bit.
Yeah, and so here is another example of kind of using things to add texture to a picture. So it's this, I don't know, it's a weed of some sort. I couldn't tell you what it is, pretty. But yeah. And then the second exposure is actually like a flowing creek. And so you see the ripples in the of the water is actually what gives it its texture. Kind
Yeah,
of gives it a
that's
painterly feel.
yeah. I thought that was very very smart the way it's done. I would have never guessed, and it really gives it a painterly look. So definitely a lot more art than artsy as far as I'm concerned. Really nice, and yeah, there's tons that you can experiment with. I think you're already getting the gist. It's like, grab your camera and go and experiment with it. And after a while, you'll figure out what works, what doesn't work, what kind of stuff you like, how your camera, thinks, I guess. And that's going to be the most important part, is that you are going to experiment with it and that you have fun with it also. Because this is also something that came after a while, that I, looked at what else I could do, is instead of, having two different images, have this is the same image taken twice, just once out of focus is the second image, to give you a background that complements what's in the image. So there's endless possibilities again once you
Yeah, because that's a
once
picture
you
you
get that
wouldn't
idea.
think of as a double exposure. It doesn't necessarily look like a double exposure. It looks like maybe there is some foreground and especially background plants and stuff that just fell out of the focal plane or whatever. Um, so I think you can add some really cool interest to what might otherwise be like a boring background or boring scene by just using the double exposure and making one of the second exposure, just blurry.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That's that's really what it comes down to, is that you just have fun with the creative side of things. And the more fun you have, the more you will find out what's the art of the possible.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah, and
Robert is
go ahead.
sorry, Ritchie. Like Robert saying, he didn't know that there's so much to double exposures. That's exactly the point. And you will once you cotton onto it, and once you experiment with it. But we haven't even gotten into the best part yet. But once you're there, you will have tons of fun.
Yeah, and Dan brings up a good point. Like with average, I generally will take the picture that I want to be most pronounced of the two. I will usually make that overexposed just a little bit, and the one that I want less pronounced, I'll make it underexposed just a little bit. Not a lot, but just a little bit. But even that depends on the highlights and the shadows, and we'll get to this a little bit more in just a moment. But it's just a lot of practice is what it takes to kind of get a feel for what happens when you lay one photo on top of another.
Yes. Yeah. And
Yeah.
this, to me, was
Yeah.
where I really started to realize that there is so much more to double exposure than this, because you're looking at this image and you would think of a lot of things, knowing that you make all sorts of vintage looking recipes. You think, oh, what kind of a recipe is this? And then you look a little bit deeper and realize that this is a double exposure. And I think this is really smart, and this is where the opportunities and the possibilities become absolutely endless, as far as I'm concerned.
So yeah, this kind of looks like a picture that maybe has begun to fade, and because it's fading, has beginning to get a color shift to it. I mean, you can find these in photo albums and that kind of stuff all over the place. If a photo doesn't last forever, and then especially if it wasn't stored properly, it can degrade over time, and so we see these a lot. And you can mimic that using double exposures by taking a second exposure of something that is just a plain color and putting it out of focus.
Yes. Yeah, this is super smart. We'll get into, the details of it just now, but I thought that was really, really cool and really interesting. So I tried my bit and also just realized that I can create faded looks and vintage kind of feels with a second exposure. So
Yeah,
there was
and
a comment there.
in this picture here, I mean, if not for the vase, I mean, it looks like it could be 100 years old.
Yes.
Yeah, it looks yesteryear for sure.
Yeah.
That is.
Although I think this was a comment to the previous image, but
Oh.
in general, this kind of a look is definitely something that gives a very much a vintage feel, and that's what we're all about. So we're going to have a look at how that is done. Just before we get into the recipes, there is some more stuff that we wanted to share with you to make sure that you get the most out of this kind of a practice. And just some pointers starting out with recipes. We will recommend some recipes for you, but when you go further or you explore other things, just to make sure that you choose recipes that have a lot of contrast.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that you should just stick with recipes with a lot of contrast. But feel free to try. But just in my experience, the recipes that have more contrast tend to do better for double exposures, because putting one picture on the other, it tends to like fade it, or like you can see in this image here, the bush in the background where my sun isn't overlapping it, looks very like washed out and faded.
Yes.
So having a recipe that has a lot of contrast in it will help, give it a little bit more oomph, I guess.
Yes. No, and it makes perfect sense to do it like this. So not only is contrast something that really helps, but also underexposing, like Ritchie said, either both images or at least one of them. And again, this is something that you'll develop more of a feel for it once you get started in it.
And
that
definitely
underexposing it will give you more detail.
And definitely, if you're doing additive, you for sure want to underexpose. I want to go back to that last picture if it's not too much trouble.
It's not trouble at all.
I just want to say how cool it is that you put the sun shining through the trees right on the eye of that bird. I think that's super cool. Anyway, then we can move on.
Yes. Thank you. We can also add textures. So not only can we overlay colors and fades and different structures, we can also add texture by applying Ritchie's technique that we will learn about just now.
Yeah, so this is a canvas, like that you would paint on, just a plain white canvas, and so if you're after that kind of look of a picture printed on canvas, but not necessarily actually printed on canvas, you can do that in camera using double exposures.
Who would have thought? So that's one very cool technique as well. And for all the lovers of more traditional looking double exposures, you can achieve this kind of a look in camera as well. It takes maybe a little bit more planning. It takes a bit more, thought to put into it, that you have the two different subject available straight away, because you obviously need to take them pictures in sequence. So but it's possible, definitely possible in camera.
And this is additive.
And this is in an additive exposure. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
And that's, there are more different types of exposures available in the camera, but I think the ones that we're really looking at are average, which is the traditional one, and additive is what this kind of a look will produce. And
Yeah,
that's
the
more
other
than
ones are a
enough to
little
play
bit
with.
tricky. Yeah.
Yes. It's enough to keep you busy, trust me.
Yeah.
And again, just to get back to Robert's point, just to add meaning to your images, it will make them stand out more and be longer lasting, and they will be also more fun. Once you start thinking about what all you can layer on top of one another, it will, you will...
Yeah, and a picture of solar panels in and of themselves may not be that meaningful or interesting, or a picture of a bunch of leaves on the ground may not be all that meaningful or interesting. But you put them together, and it adds a whole new meaning to both.
Yes. Yeah. So this is the different types of exposures that you can create in camera. And the way you do that is by practicing. Like we said, it's really just putting time in and applying yourself a little bit. I think we were talking about this as well already in black and white photography. Once you zone into the topic and you get feedback straight away from your camera, which is really nice, and it helps you to learn so much faster, you will realize how much fun it is, and you'll want to practice lots.
Yeah, and this was on a Fujifilm X100F, so it's average. You don't have the option of additive or average or whatever, but that's what it automatically is. So even if you don't have the additive, you can still do some of those type of pictures where it's a scene within a scene, kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So for everyone who's holding a bit of an older camera, do not fear. You will be able to create lots of awesome photographs. Mm-hmm. And the more you practice, the more you will get into it. I can't stress it enough. And I hope you will find lots of interesting things to photograph. And I think, coming up on the holidays, we thought this is a good topic that you need a little bit more time for, and hopefully during the festive season you will be able to experiment lots and create lots of... I see Christmas lights overlaying all sorts of different photographs here without preempting anything. But I'm jealous that you are starting out on this journey.
Yep.
All right. And to get you started, we want to give you and share 3 recipes that you can experiment with. Those, we will be talking about as far as our challenge is concerned that we are getting to. But those are the 3 recipes that we've chosen, which will, give you really cool results and should be lots of fun to experiment with.
Yep, and we chose mystery chrome and dramatic monochrome because they have a lot of contrast and they're a very punchy recipe, so they do pair well with this type of photography.
Yes, and because we were feeling nostalgic, mystery chrome was a no-brainer. We definitely had to bring it back. So it does really well. We will show you some sample images that we've created with it just now. And dramatic monochrome really is stunning. The image that I shared just now, the portrait of Stanley with the leaves, was done in dramatic monochrome, for example. And, I got this image and I'm like, I'm loving this recipe. So it's definitely good choices there. And faded negative is the third one, which is the one that is a bit of a mind bender, because it doesn't use 2 photographs of 2 different scenes, but it is created differently. And this is why, if you were looking for it in Ritchie's app, you will not find it, because
Yes.
it needs additional features to it. And I will hand over to you, Ritchie, and you can explain properly all the ins and outs about this recipe. But this is recipe number 3, and we will share the links to the recipes in the comments so that you can find this one as well.
Yeah, so there are 6 recipes, including faded negative, on the Fuji X Weekly website that require double exposures. And because they're more complicated and need further explanations, they're just not conducive to putting into the app, unfortunately. So you won't find them in the app, but you will find them on the website. And we'll have the link to faded negative. And then sometime later, I'll put a link to all of them on my website if you want to check out the others too. But we wanted to give a further explanation on this one in particular, because we're going to be shooting with it. What Nathalie did to get it into the app is she put it in into the custom recipes, the blank recipe card, and then she took a screenshot of a note that she had created that explains the other parts of the steps, the missing pieces that you need to be able to use this recipe. She put it in her notes app, took a screenshot of it, and put it as one of the photos in the custom recipe. And I thought that was a really cool way to add that into it. So so if you want to do that, if you want to put it into your app, you can do a blank recipe card, fill it out with the parameters, and then also go into Word or Notes or whatever you use, write out the extra steps, take a screenshot of it, and make it one of your pictures.
So just to explain to people in case they haven't used the custom recipe tab yet in the app, it is a bit structured differently to the way the recipes show that are part of Ritchie's recipes, because there's no note section at the bottom. Otherwise, you can write all sorts of stuff in the notes, but this is not an option yet, I hope, in the app. So this is the workaround, and the point is that you have instructions, and you will go to the blog post where Ritchie explains it. It will make a lot more sense once you've read the entire story around it. But basically, there are additional steps you need for the second exposure, and especially when you're starting out with it, you will go back and forth into the blog post while you're taking the pictures, and that can be a little bit cumbersome. So this is a bit of a shortcut to it, just some pointers so that you don't forget to change all the different settings depending on what kind of recipe you're shooting with. With faded negative, it's pretty much straightforward, because what you need is I don't know if we've mentioned that yet. You need a piece. We're talking about all these additional whatevers, and we haven't mentioned. So all you need as your second exposure basically is a piece of construction paper in green that you photograph out of focus.
It's a key point, is you got to make sure it's out of focus, and you can use any color, but the recipe specifically calls for like a medium green. I raided my kids' art drawer, and I did not find a medium green construction paper, so I need to buy this box that Nathalie has here, and so I have all the colors to choose from. But so my pictures that we'll get to in a little bit are going to look slightly different because it was more of a darker green paper that I found. But the color, I think it looks really good with this recipe of being the second exposure being a medium green piece of paper. I think it turns out really well. But also, don't be afraid to try other colors and just see if you like the results.
Yes. So I think it will, become clearer when we look at the sample images. But basically, that's the idea behind it, is that you get a toned image in camera with this kind of a technique. And it's, you know, all theoretical, and photography is a practical thing. So go try it out, get shooting with it, and you will understand what we are talking about.
Yeah.
But just as a summary, so these are the 3 recipes that we want you to shoot with over the festive season. The links to the recipes are in the description. If you are watching this as a recording, the recipes will also be in the description of the show so that you can find them easily. Or at the same time, if you want to go to sooc.live, we always make sure that we have a summary of everything leading up to, or what you need to take part in the challenge on that page as well. So let's have a look at some sample images that we created, all in camera, all double exposures. And let's get you started there, Ritchie.
Yeah, so this is one I captured. It's my daughter laying on a sidewalk. I used the average mode with the mystery chrome recipe, and the second exposure is of a car windshield. So that's what you kind of see some of the reflections in it.
Yeah. So creativity is a great thing, great tool to use. Using this. And this is another mystery chrome. It looks very different because this was shot indoors, so you've got a bit more of a yellow tinge to the image, but it's the statue and the heart lying on the tiled floor is the second photograph.
And I thought this one was really cool. I really like this one.
Thank you.
I like the little triangle of the tile, how it you know, goes over the,
yes,
adds like a dimension to it.
Yes. Yeah, that was lucky that was there. But yeah, those are the things that you will find and come across once you get started. Just like this here. I don't know what the backstory to this image is.
Oh, we were in the car waiting, and you know, sometimes when you're bored, you grab your camera and you just start trying to do stuff. So my son was in the back seat, and I said, "Here, I'm going to take your picture." And then I pointed the camera out the window, and that was the second exposure. But yeah, it's just an example of combining 2 pictures. The mystery chrome recipe is nothing special. There's no deep meaning to it or anything like that. But just this is the kind of things you can do.
Yes. Yeah. It's really cool. I obviously had to try something different. Looking around the house, seeing what else can I put on top of or inside of something. Yeah. So
yeah, that's pretty cool.
I found this, and again, it's mystery chrome indoors. It'll give you a much warmer feel. But if you don't like color, then try dramatic monochrome.
Yep, and you know what's cool about this particular picture is I think it draws your attention to my daughter's eyes in it, just how the light goes. But my daughter doesn't like this picture because it's of a like waterfall dresser, and so the wood like curves, and it kind of makes her face appear to curve as well. So so it's kind of a mind bender a little bit when you look at that. And so I thought it was pretty cool. But
yes,
but she didn't
also
like it.
yeah, shame. I also think it's really cool. I was wondering what is the second exposure there.
And this is also with average. I used average for this one.
Yes. I used additive for this.
Mm-hmm.
And the dog makes a reappearance once again.
Yep.
Yeah, so this you need additive for. You'll get a feel for it. What is the difference? Like we said, you will see pretty much in camera straight away what kind of
Well,
results you
and
get.
if we go back to that one, I just want to point out what I suspect is that you have the silhouette of the dog is kind of a low angle, and it's the sky behind them, right, in the background. Is that
It's
like
no,
the?
it's bush. It's a plant. It's like a
No,
creeper
no, no,
that's
no, no. I mean, in the exposure of the dog, not the second exposure. The exposure of the dog.
Oh, the exposure of the dog is against the white wall.
A white wall. Okay.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things for like a picture like this that you want to be looking for is where you have the shape, you're able to capture the shape of the object or the dog or the person or whatever it is, and you want the background of that to be like plain, like a white wall or a clear sky or something like that.
Yes. Thank you for
So
pointing
that
that
when you
out.
overlay it on top of the second picture, it'll come through like this.
Yes. That's correct. All right. Or you add texture
And so
to.
yeah, so yeah, this is just the average again, and it's just cooking. My wife was cooking in the kitchen, and so I snapped a picture of the pot that's got something cooking inside of it, and then for the second exposure, it's just the dining room table, so you get the texture of the wood overlaid on top of it.
Yes. Nice. Yeah. So So this is average,
Hmm.
and
It's
again, sorry.
Yeah,
This
and it's
is
just a case
additive.
of, and this is cool. I want you to talk about this in a moment, but just to go back to my previous picture, you don't have to go back to it. Oh, okay.
Too
The
late.
I I overexpose a little bit the picture of the pot, and then I underexpose a little bit of the picture of the wood, and that's what I did for that one. So for those trying to get a feel for how you do it and that kind of stuff, that's some of the things you want to be trying and thinking about.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, I think I found it a bit difficult to visualize beforehand, underexposing and overexposing and whatever. You'll get a feel for it once you have the camera in your hand and you start snapping away. It will make a lot of sense. And this image is an additive example. Again, you will see, because of the sky, the everything around the ball that I'm holding in my hand is so much brighter. And the ball is actually a solid color ball. I took it because I was looking for something dark. And then I found this ball lying around, and I used that. And then when I showed Ritchie this picture, he said, well, this could just be a glass reflection. But it is actually, it's actually the sky and the trees coming through because of a double exposure. It's actually a solid color ball. There's just a bit of reflection on the sides. So yeah, you could think it's taken as one photograph in camera, which is also fine.
Yeah.
You don't need to take a double
Yeah.
exposure knowing that it was a double exposure.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I thought that was really cool. So you can actually use objects like a ball or anything. Be creative. And by using these double exposure techniques, you can actually imprint the background onto that shape, so it's really cool.
Yeah. A similar practice to the silhouette of a person. I just, had... I don't have 4 children running around on my property like Ritchie does. So I've got limited access to people. So it has to be whatever else I can find around here. Yeah, so and I really enjoyed this dramatic monochrome. It really is fun, and especially with additive. So that's why, it will find its way into the challenges that we get into in a moment. But if you want to create more color, we're getting into the faded negative, and maybe we need to just, go back into explaining exactly what's happening when we use this recipe.
So you take a picture, and I used average for the setting, double exposure setting, and the first photo here is of the fan in the window, and then the second exposure is of a green piece of paper. I filled the frame with it, and I made sure it was out of focus. You don't want it to be. If it's in focus, it'll put the paper, the texture of the paper into the. But by being out of focus is just fuzzy, and what that does is it kind of lifts the shadows, makes them milky, and makes the highlights kind of creamy. But it's going to be the color of the paper. So in here we get these green shadows and kind of green highlights. But what it kind of reminds me of is if you have like a negative, color negative film, a lot of them aren't really conducive for underexposing. So if you underexpose them a couple stops or stop, and then you try and lift those shadows in a scan or printing them, they often come out green looking. So that's what you kind of are seeing mimicked here using the double exposure.
Yeah, so this is the one that I had lots of fun with as well, and thought it was a really cool effect. This is clearly, a little bit more overexposed on my green exposure, so it's not quite as green as Ritchie's, and I think, just different lighting conditions. But this is...
Yeah, and I think my paper was a different shade of green, because mine was a darker green. I didn't really have the right color, but...
Yeah, but it also, only because we are calling for green doesn't mean you need to stop there. There are lots of different colors available. you can choose. It's a lot of fun to see what effect what color has. But that's the idea, is that your second exposure is a blurry, fuzzy piece of green paper.
Yeah, in this picture, I thought it was interesting how the green paper actually accentuates the green color in a scene. So if you want to kind of make that green pop a little more or something, you can also use it for that.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention the discussion we had around the presence of color filters or not, because some people may think, well, why don't I just, be a bit more professional about this and use the color filter as people used to in the film days. And I guess to a certain extent, you can still do in digital photography as well. But that would definitely give you a very different result. And maybe, Ritchie, can I ask you just to explain a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, and that would be a good way to consider. Maybe it would be good just to use a color filter. But what will happen is it'll block a lot of the colors that you would like. Like, for example, in this picture, you see the red. Well, the red's going to get blocked a lot more by those, by that green filter, and you're not going to really pick up on that nearly as much. The sensor, has, red, green, and blue, the pixels or whatever. And so it's going to block those red ones in it. And the other thing is that by doing the double exposure, it's going to lift and create kind of those milky shadows. It's going to make those creamy highlights. And that's not going to happen if you use the filter as well. So, I mean, it's something you can try if you really want to try. I've done it before, and the results aren't anything worthwhile, in my opinion, to do anything with. But, we're all on this road together, so there's nothing wrong with experimenting, and feel free to try that. But I think this technique produces a much different look than what you would get if you just used a colored filter.
Thank you. Yeah, I also think that there are discussions that can be found and that come up all the time. If what about using color filters? We're going all retro with the look and with the film, and then add vintage lenses, and then people want to extend it even further and add filters as well. But that's the one thing that's a little bit tricky because, yeah, when as much as we think we're shooting film, we are not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just lastly, as the last sample image, I wanted to just explain or experiment with something that I found Ritchie was talking about in one of his other articles. There are quite a few, and it's a lot of food for thought. And what you're looking at here is, again, a double exposure with faded negative. The first one is of the coffee pot standing on the stove. And the second exposure is of the green card, but it's, as you can see, kind of like around the coffee pot, but not filling the entire image. And it's very out of focus. So what I was trying to do was getting a gradient, because in, with the inspiration from that post that you wrote, Ritchie, was that you had like a two-tone effect by using two different color cards. And you're also talking about a gradient. And yeah, so I just thought, let me give it a try. What if, I just don't fill the entire image with it? And yeah, so that was the result. And that's just to let you know that, just break out the norm and try something, because you never know what kind of result you're going to get out of it.
Yeah, and this picture blew me away. I mean, it just absolutely blew me away, and it reminds me of like the old like Polaroid pill apart film, and I just I can't say enough how like just cool the light on the right, the light on the left, how the shadow is, it's super cool. I can't wait to do some experiments similar to this to see what kind of results I can get, because that is just really cool. And I hope that you guys understand what we're explaining in this, because it's hard to just explain something that you almost have to have experience with and try. But yeah, so basically, just to cement it in, hopefully, is that the second exposure is of the green piece of paper, but Nathalie did not fill the whole frame with it, and she made sure it was really out of focus, really blurry, and I think it's white, like a white floor, white tile or something that is on the outside of it. So you get a little bit of that in it on the left and on the right, and I believe on the bottom a little bit too, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, and to me, if you showed somebody this, and they're not going to think it's digital. I mean, it looks so much like, yeah, or straight out of camera. They might say, well, yeah, you use some sort of, plugins and presets in your Lightroom or something, and you are able to mimic a film look through that, or it was actually film. Like I said, it's just blows my mind. So yeah, I don't know if you guys appreciate it as much as I do, but this is like a super cool picture.
Shame. Well, it's you gave me the tools to do it. So I think the biggest thing that we're here for is to point you in the right direction, to give you the ideas, and then go run with it and see what you can make, and use these recipes and check them out. And mix it up, go with the flow. I can't stress it enough. It's really rewarding. It really is. And we hope that you get some inspo out of this and some ideas as what you can do with these recipes.
And just to kind of briefly discuss each one here just a moment more. The Mystery Chrome is compatible with X-Trans 3 plus the X-T3 and the X-T30. If you want to use it on newer cameras, you have to set color chrome effect blue to off, grain size. You have to pick a grain size, and and you have to set clarity to 0. But you can use them on the newer cameras if you take those steps. Just clarity 0, pick a grain size either small or large, and set color chroma effect blue to off. For dramatic monochrome, it's can be used. It's designed for the XT3, XT30. It calls for color chroma effect set to strong. Older cameras don't have that, but the difference in black and white between color chroma effect strong and color chroma effect off is extremely small. So it's going to, if you just ignore color chroma effect, if your camera doesn't have that, you're going to get pretty much the same results. So go ahead and use that on an X-Trans 3 camera if you have one. For the newer cameras, it's again setting a grain size, strong or small, setting color chroma effect blue to off, and setting clarity to 0. The faded negative recipe is for the X Pro 3 and newer cameras. If you have an older camera, you can't use it, but there are other recipes. And like I said, I'll link to those here shortly in the near future on Fuji X Weekly on my website. And even if you have an X-Trans 2 camera, there's a recipe that uses that technique. So almost no matter what camera you have, there's a similar recipe that you could try if you want to, if you can't use the faded negative.
Yeah, because so it's on the one hand, it's the recipe that needs to be compatible, and then on the other, the way that the double exposure is taken. We keep on talking about additive or average, which is available in newer cameras. There are 2 recipes that use this kind of a technique as faded negative, but in a different way that can be used on older cameras. So if you want to play around with it, then you can also have a look at those. We will put the link in the comments and, give you lots of ammunition to shoot with. It's not part of the challenge. The challenge goes around these 3 recipes, but just so that you have lots of variation. If you wish to, you can do that. And I also recommend that you take a screenshot of this, because this is quite helpful while you're busy shooting. You can take those recipes. The first 2, you can add those that information in the notes section, so you always have it at hand. And then, if you feel like loading the faded negative recipe into the custom recipes, then, go ahead and also add those notes, so that you can refresh your memory with those extra pointers. But I keep on talking about challenge. And we felt it's challenging enough already to make double exposures. So that's basically, what we are challenging you to do is create double exposures. But to give it a bit of structure and put a bit of sense, into it, I think. We said to use mystery chrome is best with an average exposure. So this is one part of the challenge. To experiment with additive exposure is really great in dramatic monochrome. So go ahead and try that. And thirdly, use the technique that we hopefully described kind of like enough to make sense to it, and use faded negative with it and create images with that recipe.
Yeah,
and
so
this is
just to
your
be
challenge
clear.
throughout the festive season.
Yep. And just to be clear, the big, just the main overall challenge is just shooting double exposures with one of these 3 recipes. And if you can do that, that is awesome. But if you're needing a little bit more, then you feel up to the challenge of doing something extra. That's that's where we're here saying, try mystery chrome with average, try dramatic monochrome with additive, and try the faded negative recipe, you making the second exposure the out of focus piece of paper. So this, I know that this is a challenging topic, just to begin with. It's not easy, but we hope with the extra time over the holidays and into the new year that you'll be able to get lots of practice in and take some really cool pictures. And we really can't wait to see what you do with it.
Yes, we cannot wait. And you know, you can share those images whenever you're ready. You don't have to wait until the day of the last day of the cutoff. You are more than welcome to share images with us sooner. But the latest we would like you to share those pictures with us is Tuesday, the 23rd of January. Yes, you've seen right. We are going to start out early next year and want you to share those images. It may be a little bit more complicated to share with us or to let us know how the image was taken, because it's not only a recipe, but there's maybe a little bit more information that you would like to share with us. There are quite a few of you who've started sharing a note. So when you upload your images, you upload them maybe in a folder together with the note, or you just give the note your name as well, and you upload it in addition to your images, or you put everything that you want us to know about the image in the name of the file. Whichever way it is, just give us some information so that when we create the viewer slideshows, we can share all that information and title it correctly when it goes into the slideshow.
Yeah,
But
so you can do like...
It is, and there's the link to it. Sorry, Ritchie.
Yeah, no, so like you could upload 3 images and then also like a Word document or something like that that gives a little further explanation of the pictures that you captured.
Yes, that's exactly it. Any which way you can think of to communicate with us. You're also more than welcome to just send us an email or a comment on any of the platforms. But I see there are quite a few comments still going around in the comment section. So I think maybe we can hop over into the Q&A part, because we would love to make sure that whatever questions you still have, we can iron out. We don't want to leave you hanging, and if there's something we didn't explain properly, maybe. Then you are, more than welcome to fire away. And then here's the first question, where we can submit the photos for next time. Okay, excellent. Yeah, so I think this is has been answered just now. This was probably a question from earlier in the show. Well, thank you for posting your Instagram story and for bringing World Shaking into the show. The link is also, once again, in sooc.live. That is the website where we share all the information that you need to take part in the challenge, from all the different links to the shows, to the challenge, the recipes used, and also the upload link. You can find all of that there. It will get updated tomorrow.
Yeah, and you can also take a screenshot of that QR code we just showed. So if you not sure where to go, you can always find that in the video and find it there. But it'll be on a link in the description and all that.
Yes. It is a creative process. So Torsten says you have to have creative ideas to produce attractive pictures. Absolutely. If it's a matter of not quite knowing where to start, and the images that we shared, it's kind of like, the idea that we had there. Then secondly, you can always go online and have a look and Google if you want some more information or inspiration, and see what other people are posting. And maybe keep an eye peeled on Instagram. Maybe some of the viewers are starting to share some double exposure images. So, I don't know, follow the hashtag double exposure or something like that to get an idea. Oh, Jorge. Yes, you did. You're late. If you're only tuning in now, then you're definitely very late. But maybe you've been around for a little bit. Hi, Jerry. We're all well, thank you. Thank you so much for being here with us. Yet again, as always, it's great It's great to have you here. And I'm very happy to hear that you've never done this before. So it's good that
It'll be a good first time.
give it a try. Exactly. Well, Dan,
Yeah.
I hope that we've given you now a good enough reason to remember it, because we want to see some pictures in January.
You got
from
you. Yeah. Hopefully, at least one of the Kodak building. I think that would be fun, and do something creative with that in a double exposure.
Yes.
That's an additional challenge for Dan.
Yeah, personal challenge. And he also has a tip for us. He says to change the zoom, to take the first picture, zoomed in on a moon or a sunset, and then zoom out for a wide angle look in the opposite direction of the sunset. Okay, this is challenge number 5 for you, Dan. It sounds very interesting. I'll definitely give that a try. Thank you.
I appreciate the tip. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, there's Pilot Pete.
Hello,
Hey.
Pete. Hope all's well. Great to hear that you love the faded negative look. Hopefully, you've been here in time to hear about us explaining how to create that look. If anyone wants us to go over it again, then please let us know. Otherwise, we hope that we've made it clear how to create those images.
Yeah, so check out Dan's YouTube channel and take a look at his double exposure videos.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Dan. That sounds awesome. We will definitely check it out. And we will need to let everyone know how to get the setting.
Yeah. So, like on a camera like this that has the drive, it's on the top thing. I would show you on the XT4, but it's what's recording here on the on the X100V. It's the drive button that you use to and then in the menu you can, on the newer cameras, the X Pro 3 and newer, you can choose between 4 different options for double exposures, and we're just using the average and the additive. There's a couple others that you can play around with. Feel free to do it. I find those much more difficult to get good results with, but definitely feel free to try if you want.
Yeah. So I would recommend you look in your manual if you're not sure what kind of, depending on the camera model that you have, where to find the double exposure, multiple exposure as Fujifilm calls it, and then take it from there. And Pilot Pete is saying that he can't find the app, the faded negative recipe in the app. Yes, that's correct. It is not in the app. We've shared a link in the comments, but we will also share a link in the description of the show of the recipe, because it is not an appable recipe.
Yeah.
We talked about it earlier in the show, so when we're at the end of it, Pete, I'd recommend you just go back to it where we talk about the different recipes. You can add it yourself with an extra tip that we shared, but because it is not a straightforward just settings, but you need additional information for your second exposure, it's not really possible at this point to put it in the app. So you need to go to Ritchie's blog for that one.
Yeah, you have to read the whole article about the recipe to understand how to use it.
Yes. Hello, Enrico. Tuning in from India. It's really late where you are, I think. So thank you for tuning in.
It's got to be. Yes.
Yes.
Is it already the next day there? That's my question.
Just about, I think. Yeah, I think it's about between 3 or 4 hours later than here. So yeah, it's about midnight. And Dan is sharing some more wisdom. He says that you can't change the double exposure once it's saved. It just makes a
Yeah,
new
you can't.
JPEG.
Like on the newer cameras, if you do RAW plus JPEG, it'll save a RAW of both exposures, and it'll make the double exposure. But you can't go back and make adjustments to the double exposure.
Oh, as you can't reprocess the raw file like you would with reprocessing it in camera for another recipe.
Not as a double not as a double exposure. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so there are a couple of people that joined late. A good reason for you to catch up with the broadcast, no problem at all. We know live sometimes doesn't allow you to tune in on time. That's okay. Just go back and watch it. Useful information that we shared there. So make sure that you catch up on it.
Oh, this probably was said before the other comment by Dan. So this probably came first.
Yes, yeah. So Dan is asking if you can start with an existing picture that you already have and then put an additional image on top of it then. So I know that in other camera brands there is a possibility to do that. Fujifilm doesn't give us that option. So you can't double expose in camera Mount Everest and the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, it would be very hard to do. You would have to have your camera stay on and then
fly quickly.
So if somebody wants to do this, so this is how you'd have to do it. You'd have to get one of those battery adapters where it plugs into a power source, right? It's like a fake battery, but it plugs in. And so then you'd have to leave your camera on, but you would want it to be real dim, because you don't want to overheat, right? So some cameras overheat a lot easier than others. So you wanted a camera, maybe the X-T4, it doesn't overheat really easy. I've left it on 4K video overnight and it stayed on. So something like the X-T4, use an external power source to power it so it doesn't run out of battery. You leave it on, you snap a picture of Mount Everest, you hop a flight. I don't know if perhaps the airline will be the problem with this. They may not allow you to take the camera still operating onto the flight, but then you've got to fly to Paris and then take the second exposure. So
okay. If you didn't know yet what to do over the festive season, here's an idea. Alrighty-o. Yeah, but for all other ways, you will have to take the picture that you've taken just before that one, and it'll be of a similar scene, I guess. Mm-hmm. Anyway, you get our idea, and yeah, go crazy, go creative, and have lots of fun with it. And I think, we are really excited to see what you come up with, as always, and share those images as and when you take them. And also, if you have any questions, because this process is maybe a little bit trickier, please share questions and comments with us on all our channels, and we will definitely be there to help you along and to get you moving.
Yep.
But speaking of moving, we will be moving into season number 4. Can you believe it? We will kick off on the 25th of January, another Thursday. But do make sure that you subscribe also to the notifications on this channel, because we will, obviously, as and when we go live again, what we schedule, any announcement, news that we do, make sure that you don't lose out on it. So make sure you get notified. We will be kicking off something completely different. We will try something new. And I am extremely excited about this. But for now, let's stay a bit yeah, mysterious and leave
Yep.
you hanging with this cliffhanger. Like a proper season finale has to be.
Yep. Yeah, that you're on the edge of your seat right now, wanting to know what this brand new recipe is, but you'll have to
Yes.
wait till January.
25th, right here
Yep.
on this channel.
Hmm.
And like I said, to make sure that you don't miss out, subscribe, share this with everyone you know that might be interested, so that we can keep this channel growing and growing and growing. It's been a ton of fun.
Oh,
And,
it has been.
yeah, and it was great to have you all here and to reconnect one more time. And yeah, it's been a really cool season. It's been wonderful to also to do this with you, Ritchie. As always, super inspiring. There is Robert sharing my sentiments. That's great. I'm very happy to hear. And yeah, we hope that you will have a wonderful festive season and that you can wind down and relax and create awesome JPEGs.
Yep. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and looking forward to January 25th.
Yes, very much so. Super excited for it. Go get some rest. Ritchie, I know you've also been working super hard. There's, yeah, time for the family, everyone. And keep well, keep safe, keep happy, keep shooting lots of JPEGs. We will see you again very, very soon, even though it's in the new year. Up until then.
Bye, Nathalie. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Keep well.
Okay.
And happy holidays.